take my opportunity to say my greeting. Hello, everybody. Good early morning to our friends in North and South America. Good afternoon to our friends in the UK, Europe. Good early evening, our friends in the Arab states. Good evening to our friends in India, Thailand, Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia. Good late evening to our friend in Australia. I hope you are well. Nice to see your faces again. We have a question, JC.
Dear Ajahn, the precept to refrain from killing seems clear enough, but how do I not kill ants, cockroaches, centipedes, spiders, snakes, etc.? Since I have broken this precept, what will happen to me? Thank you.
So Lord Buddha refers to the 5 precepts as a training, a sekha, Panchasila sekha. So we undertake the training of keeping the 5 precepts, and we do try to keep it strictly. And in the past, it probably is the case that there's too many ants, you spray them with some nasty chemical, or you see something that might bite you, which is harmful, you kill it. And so as Buddhists, we do try to do less of that. So if it's possible to sweep the ants away, we sweep them away. If it's possible to capture the spider gently with a kind of paper towel or something and then put it outside, we do that. So this is how we develop patience and loving kindness by learning it's really valuable training actually, because that impulse to kill something that you perceive as a threat, it's the hatred, irritation, anger, aversion, and hatred, the 3 root kilesas, craving, aversion, and delusion. So this is a big problem for us. This is a large part of what binds us to the wheel of samsara and thrusts us into birth after birth after birth. So a training of restraining this energy and learning how to show much more care towards other sentient beings is very, very valuable and very important. So whenever possible, when you see a centipede or a scorpion, you try to sweep it out of your house if you can, or you try to put some kind of cover over it and then put some paper under it or a lid under it, and you take it outside and you let it go. It's not, you don't just justify, this is something that might harm me, so I kill it. We stop doing that. We take it as an opportunity to develop patience, loving kindness, and to train ourselves to stop striking out with hatred at things that we perceive that could harm us. Very important. So, but with regards to having broken it, well, we all have. And it's not in Buddhism, there isn't a judgmental God, or sometimes in Taoism, the judge after your death that's going to decide whether you go to heaven or whether you go to hell. It's, there's tens of thousands of lives of wholesome karmas, unwholesome karmas, neutral karmas, and it's just a bit more in the soup, right? There are consequences to killing beings, and if we kill a lot, the consequence that the Buddha talks about is that you will shorten your lifespan. When you shorten the lifespans of other creatures, you will have your lifespan shortened. If you cause pain to the beings that you kill, then you're going to have various types of pain in your body manifesting. So, but of course, when we make the effort to do it as little as possible, and we bring qualities such as patience, compassion, loving kindness, goodwill, care, then it's cultivating the opposite. It's cultivating good karma. We do have to forgive ourselves for the things we did in the past when we didn't know better. Now that we know better, we have to try as hard as we can to be as harmless as possible. And sometimes you can't be, like sometimes in the monastery, even here, when something really gets overrun with ants to the extent, because we're living in a forest in a tropical country, if the ants really invade and the monk can no longer stay in the kuti, we have a gardener that does come and spray the nasty chemicals. And we try not to do it, and every now and then we have to. And that's kind of part of his job, and it's part of living in a forest. But the point is we try to do it as little as possible, to try to be as harmless as we can be. And I remember when I moved into my new kuti that I helped to build last year, and I laid down my head on the pillow and I was looking up, because it used to be a meditation platform and it had a ledge around the edge, old bricks, and I wanted to preserve the old look, have a bit of rustic charm. So we built the wall up upon the previous railing of bricks, and I placed my head down and I was enjoying, oh, what a nice new kuti. And I noticed that about 20 centimeters from my face, I saw this scorpion come out of a crack in the wall and walk around a little circle and then go back into this crack. And I'm like, oh my God, I have to sleep with a scorpion 20 centimeters from my face. What do I do? And nobody wants to be, and you know, you're falling asleep with that. Oh my God, the scorpion's going to come out and sting me while I'm sleeping. But that's actually that's a bit neurotic and a bit paranoid. Like, scorpions don't come out and deliberately sting people just because they're nasty. Despite, I think there is that parable, isn't there, of the scorpion that does kill something. There's some kind of analogy. But anyway, in real life, the scorpion will sting you if you step on it or if you try to catch it. But if you stay out of its way, it's not going to come out and try to hurt you. So I had options. Do I get someone to stick a twig into that hole? Do I concrete up that hole so that the scorpion can't come out? And I just decided, no, I'm not going to have someone stick a stick into the hole. And I thought, maybe scorpions have just a really short life. And it's kind of trying to justify, you notice that mind, maybe it could be killed because it's not going to live for very long anyway. And then I did a little search, and I think scorpions have an average lifespan of 4 years or something. It's like, wow. And I'm like, well, killing it is definitely shortening its lifespan, right? And so I just decided, well, I'm going to take my chances. And I've never seen it again. But we didn't spray chemicals. We didn't seal it up with concrete. And I just practiced with my fear and restrained my desire to have it killed, obliterated. And I just spread metta to the scorpion as I was falling asleep. And to this day, he hasn't come out and stung me, even though he lives 20 centimeters from my face. So if he's still alive, I don't know. I do think making good karma and dedicating merit to any beings who we've harmed is a good thing to do. That's a kind of a repentance practice, but it's also like making the opposite type of karma, because like I was saying, we have this kind of accumulated soup of karmas that we've got, and if we can pour some good ingredients in there, especially different types of merit. So if we know we've harmed beings, then we do something skillful. So in Thailand, it's very common to go to the market, buy some fish which are still kind of breathing, which haven't been killed yet, take them and release them back into the river. Same with eels, same with turtles. And so then when that's like increasing the lifespans of beings who were about to be killed, it's a kind of a gesture of making up for it. And then the merit of that, you dedicate any beings who I've harmed knowingly or unknowingly, intentionally or unintentionally. I dedicate the merits to you, please forgive me. And this will lighten the karma when it ripens. Or when it does ripen, there may be other influences around that help you through the painful experience.
Ajahn, question number 2. Dear Ajahn, may I know your thoughts regarding Qigong and Reiki healing? Is it wrong for Buddhists to practice this in terms of tapping into the universal life force energy for self-healing oneself and others? I appreciate your advice. Thanks, Ajahn.
So yes, there are these healing arts, and particularly in Asia, any really good acupuncturist there really is something to it. Like some of the greatest meditation masters in Thailand until recently used to fly to see a doctor in Yunnan province in China, because he would be able to stick his those two fingers on the pulse on the wrist and know exactly what was wrong with which organs and what was needed in terms of herbs to stimulate. So some of these great masters had malaria many times. Some of them have had kind of chronic dysentery for a decade, or people growing up in a different era with less hygiene and probably got some bugs in that were quite stubborn. And this doctor's ability to read energies and to know about qi and to know about the energies in herbs, this really has helped some of our greatest masters to live longer. So there really is something to this. And then with the kind of the shiatsu masters, the aikido masters, there are energies, more subtle energies that can be tapped into, can be channeled. And I would assume that deciding to be a healer is along the path is more like a bodhisattva path practice. And it's often the case, I've asked Tanajanan, it's often the case that people who do this kind of work have devas who work with them in parallel realms, who are working through them because they want to make good karma by helping human beings. So they will use that person as a vessel. If a person is hoping to develop liberating insight quickly and be liberated from samsara, I do think that these kind of activities will complicate that. Because we're trying to liberate our mind through developing perfect mindfulness of the body as a body, feelings as feelings, thoughts as thoughts, this body, these feelings, these thoughts. And if you make yourself receptive to other consciousnesses, devas consciousnesses that are working through you and sending energy through you, then it's a bit tricky. It's not just your mind anymore, trying to be mindful of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. If your approach in practice is of the paradigm that you want to help as many beings as possible, or you want to help a few beings on your path towards enlightenment, and when you get enlightened, you want to have certain beautiful qualities. So there's many eventual outcomes which are quite different, right? An arahant with a quick liberation path, an arahant with full psychic powers, an arahant with analytical knowledges who has the mastery of teaching, a foremost disciple, a great disciple, a Pacceka Buddha, a celestial bodhisattva. There's many different outcomes of Buddhist practice. So I think if a person knows that their practice is going to be a longer one with a more grand outcome, then taking on these healing vocations or activities in order to benefit others, so that you accumulate more merit and develop more compassion in your processes, then that's okay. But I think it complicates the path to swift liberation. I think it does. But if one isn't aiming for the swiftest liberation, and if one is intending to liberate many beings or help many beings, then it's probably helpful in that process, because in developing altruism and engaging compassion. Another thing to be tricky is if the ego gets involved. I am a healer with special powers. I have a connection with Kuan Yin. I feel such rapport, resonance with Kuan Yin. If one begins to develop more of an ego, more of a self through having some association with divine powers and having healing abilities, this is also tricky. One has to be truthful. Does this activity increase ego, or does this activity make one more humble? And that's something that we have to be honest about. So, and living in Thailand and meeting lots of people, been teaching for more than a decade, meet a lot of people. I've met both types. I've met people with some kind of healing abilities that seem to have a big sense of self and a bit of arrogance. And I've met others who their their gift makes them more humble. They're aware that forces greater than themselves are working through them, and there's a humility to it. So yes, be truthful, be mindful. How do these activities affect the mind? Is there less ego, or is at least the ego manifesting in ways which are truly wholesome? Then it could be a support to the bodhisattva path. In Thailand, when Thai people study Thai massage, they do an invocation prayer to Dr. Shivaka, who was the Buddha's physician. And it's believed that his healing energies will come, that he's in a heaven realm now, and he sends his healing energies to Thai masseurs. So,
Rajan, question 3. Dear Ajahn, what does liberation at sight, sound, and taste mean? Thank you.
in general, if we're going to be quoting a kind of a Buddhist teaching, I would say it's probably, ideally it's good if you're quoting the Buddha from the suttas. So when we start to wonder about phrases which seem Buddhistic, seem to be suggesting something about liberation, then, okay, really look at the source. The Buddha or a very, very well-practiced practitioner. So in general, with regards to that statement, we do try to be mindful as we progress in meditation practice. We try to be mindful at the sense bases as sense contact arises. So rather than being a person who is listening, we are mindful and we are aware that sounds are affecting the ear sense base. This is the kind of thing people get more, you get more of it. It's more likely that you can have that quality of presence of mind and awareness in a retreat-like situation when you're coming to eat and there's awareness of tastes. You're coming to meditate and there's awareness of noise, and there's less of a sense of being someone listening, being someone eating. Well, more mindfulness and a more subtle sense of self. But is it possible to have an insight by being mindful of senses as they occur at the sense bases? Yes. So if one is really paying attention and then one notices a sense contact and there is mindfulness of the arising, staying for some time, and cessation of whatever that sense contact is, there definitely can be insight developed through that practice. So it depends on how much mindfulness we have functioning in the mind and how closely we are paying attention.
Thank you, Ajahn. Ajahn, question number 4. Dear Ajahn, we hear such statements as, just as the light of a single candle can dispel the darkness of 1,000 years, the moment we light a single candle of wisdom, no matter how long or deep our confusion, ignorance is dispelled, and the darkness of 1,000 eons is dispelled by the light of a single lamp. Likewise, the luminous clarity of mind instantly dispels the negativities and obscuration amassed over eons. Does Ajahn have any comments about this? Thank you.
So, I personally don't believe that a lamp in this moment dispels the darkness of eons. It's, the past is gone, and whatever darkness was occurring in the past occurred in the past. But with regards to the darkness that affects our own minds in the present moment, it is true that when insight occurs, that insight illuminates the darkness. So I probably prefer to apply the present moment Dhamma to the present moment situation and use that as an analogy. So suppose you're coming to sit and there's a lot of hindrances and you're feeling a bit dejected. Then that's when we remind ourselves, bringing mindfulness to this in this moment it really does just take the lighting of a candle to dispel the darkness. That's kind of a positive affirmation. So we make the effort to light that candle. And it is a very nice metaphor. It's a very nice analogy. It's true. If you're in a dark room and you light one candle, the room becomes brighter. So it's like when we come and see it, if there's a lot of darkness in the mind, it's okay. Well, you say to yourself, just brighten the mind. Just apply the effort of being mindful of the meditation object and whatever wise reflection might be appropriate for bringing the mind into a state of balance. If there's irritation, we do metta. If there's too much thinking about the future, we become mindful of death and impermanence. If there's hanging on to grudges, we look at the pain of that and we offer forgiveness. You know, we do something about the darkness of the situation in our mind by applying the appropriate remedy and applying the meditation object. And normally people will find that after a half an hour, 40 minutes, 45 minutes, the mind is a less dark space. So the hindrances darken the mind and kilesas darken the mind. And for the meditation masters who have a purified divine mind, they can see this. You walk into the room and they can see how dark your mind is or how bright it is. And when you apply yourself at meditation and the mindfulness gets better, mindfulness has a clear quality, samadhi has a bright quality. So as the hindrances get less, the mind gets brighter. And then that manifests as a feeling of feeling light, feeling bright. And so there is darkness and there is lightness. And mindfulness, clear comprehension, and concentration are bright qualities, and they're the antidotes to the darkness of greed, hatred, and delusion. So that's the way we light the candle. And when one does attain to a liberating insight, it does destroy however much darkness has affected the mind for eons. Once a being has established themselves in enlightenment at the first level, that can't degenerate. So in that regards, establishing that kind of lightness and brightness does uproot the darkness of eons. But it uproots it from our mind in the present moment. So that's where practice leads. Of course, at the first level, for most people with a normal level of parami, it still takes a few lifetimes to completely eradicate all of the darkness. But that first level enlightenment, Ajahn Anan has said, explodes most of it out of the mind. Stream entry explodes most of the darkness out of the mind because the mind cannot degenerate from, it has a maximum of 7 more lives. And that insight cannot degenerate. The practitioner has unshakable faith and understanding of correct way of practice. Ajahn Buddhadasa says it takes most beings just 3 lives to go from the stream entry to the Arahant state, because he said it's almost like once you know what excrement is and you know how it smells and you know how to wash it off, you wash it off quickly. And but these great beings that get enlightened quickly in the time of the Buddha, many of them had made aspirations to be enlightened by hearing a teaching of the Buddha, so they actually delayed their enlightenment. They were very ripe, and so that they wanted to meet a Buddha, so they appear to have become enlightened very quickly, but it's because they put considerable effort into their practice in the past. So may we all illuminate the darkness of our minds with the lamp of mindfulness, concentration, clear comprehension, and wisdom. May we all slowly and steadily obliterate the darkness of eons.
Sadhu. Question 5. Dear Ajahn, why is it that thoughts about my deceased pet rabbit and about my sister and mother keep coming back to me? My sister passed away 5 years ago, and my rabbit has passed away almost 2 years ago. Yet I still think of them. Is it because their consciousness keep coming back to me? Those thoughts are associated with regrets. So I wonder what happened and what is happening, and also what should I do? Thank you.
Oftentimes, when we're looking at our current experience or experience in meditation, we're trying to work out what's happening now and Why is this happening? And what we're not mindful of is when you love somebody, in the act of loving, every time you have that thought, I love my sister, I love my rabbit, I love my cat, I love my teacher. Whenever you have those thoughts, you are cultivating attachment. And if you do it, and some attachments are skillful and some attachments aren't, and sometimes we have to make a choice, try to have more wholesome attachments than unskillful attachments. But Lord Buddha did say, wherever there is love, there is also suffering. And that is because attachment is the cause of suffering. And so probably what's happening is the decades of association or the years of association and the feelings of affection, that's the root of the problem that you're getting the experience now. You keep thinking of that person because you love them. You keep keeping of the rabbit because you loved it. That's the causes you sowed in the past. And then if you did make a mistake, if the thoughts are coming back because you have remorse, I remember this person asked this question because the rabbit had an illness and she didn't treat it properly. She feels a bit guilty. So at a certain point, we do have to decide, I forgive myself for that. I allow myself to put this down. But if you've loved something deeply, you're going to think of it often. That's the consequence of love. So 6 days ago, my cat disappeared, one of my cats, Luke Gao, and I was a bit worried because about 3 days before that, my gardener had seen the cat staring at a king cobra. The king cobra was 3 meters long and as thick as my forearm. Let's see. And the size that could eat a cat if it was hungry enough. King cobras are apex predators. They're the king of the snakes. Their main food source is other snakes. But I've studied a bit about them because I've bumped into 3 in this monastery in recent years, and I study about them. And if they can smell, they have a nose which is much more sensitive, and tongues, even their eyesight. King cobra's eyesight is good. So if that snake decided that he wanted to eat that cat, he would be able to be aware of where that cat is within about a 500-meter radius, just from smell. And so then I started thinking, oh no, my cat's been eaten by a king cobra. And, and I got to see where there is love, there is suffering. And I even shed a tear or two. I allowed myself to shed a tear. I said, okay, you feel sad. I give you permission to shed a tear. I allowed myself to feel sad for 2 minutes. This is the kind of thing that only a meditation monk would do, right? Give yourself permission to feel sad for 2 minutes. Anyway, I did. And there were tears. And I tried to be mindful of a mind state arising, staying because of time and ceasing. And then, of course, in terms of doing something skillful, we started dedicating merit to Luke Gao's auspicious rebirth. May the cat get a better life, assuming that it had been gobbled up by the king cobra. Anyway, this morning, the cat wandered back into the monastery, exhausted, hardly capable of walking after being lost in the forest for 6 days. So anyway, the cat did not get eaten by and I shed a different tear. I had a happy tear. Oh, the cat didn't die. And he got a good scolding. What are you doing wandering off into the forest? Okay, well, that's the cat's nature, right? But I know that when I love the monastery cats or the neighbor's dog or my students or my teacher, I am aware that there's suffering associated with that. And but we can't make ourselves have no attachment. We just have to be as mindful as we can when we love things, that we love them in the right amount, and that we are aware that we are going to be separated from it. So if in the experience of loving family members, teachers, relatives, neighbors, cats, pets, whatever, if in that experience we bring the knowing that we will definitely be separated from this being, if we have that awareness while we have the affection, while we're enjoying their company, when we are separated from them, the grief will be less. There's that sense of, oh, I knew I would be separated from it. I knew this was coming. So when my father passed away about 6 years ago, I didn't have very much grief. Part of it was there had already been a grieving process because he had lung cancer and it took a few years to die, and he'd had a stroke, and he wasn't quite the same after the stroke. It was almost as if he'd been leaving this life and this experience, like whoever Mel Hansen was. As he approached his death, there was like maybe 20% left of his faculties, his charisma, his humor, his energy. And there had been a process of letting him go as he was going, so that when my dad finally passed, I didn't have very heavy grief. I had grief while he was dying, but I'd done a lot of practice. And one of the things that inspired a lot of my practice in Bodhgaya to learn to sit longer and longer hours, longer periods, was to dedicate merit to my father as he was dying. So that when he did pass, there was that sense of I did what I could to help him. And I think that was also a part of why there wasn't so much grief. Talking to my mum, of course, like my mum, when I spoke with my mum, I saw my dad, I think it was about 10 days before he died, and I'd held him in my arms. He told me he loved me, he's proud of me. And I told him I loved him too. And there was nothing unresolved. I felt like I'd said goodbye. And when I spoke to my mom, she said, she said quite heavy grief for a few months. And I said, well, we knew this was coming, didn't we, Mum? And she said a very interesting answer. She says, oh, well, I was kind of thinking he'd probably get better and live a bit longer. So it's like, he's dead. And my mum hadn't accepted that he was going to die. She'd begun to accept that he might die after he was dead. And then she had a pretty heavy experience of grief for 6 months because she didn't allow it into her mind while he had 4th stage cancer, which had metastasized and moved all around the body. She hadn't allowed it into her mind that her husband was going to die. And so she did have a heavier experience of grief. So if we can be mindful in our relationships and when we have affection, that we are going to be separated from the beings we love, and train ourselves to brighten the mind and make good karma and dedicate merit, do these skillful things, you will lighten your experience of grief in the future. So, but whatever mistakes we made, we do have to forgive ourselves. And with regards to relating to thoughts, it's like sometimes thoughts just, we have our habits. It's like ruts in the mind. A thought comes up, but we don't have to add worry about the thoughts. We don't have to add more thoughts to the thoughts. In practice, we're just mindful of a thought. We allow it to arise and allow it to cease. And we don't have to be worried about the contents of our minds too much, unless we're going to act on them. So, yeah, being mindful of a thought as a thought, arising due to conditions sowed in the past, staying for some time, ceasing. Yeah. Okay, everybody.
Bye. Wishing
Take care,
you good
Ajahn.
Thank you, Ajahn.
love,
Bye-bye.
precious.
Good night.
Bye.
Have a nice day.